Hi, my name's Leighton Jin. I'm the director of development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, or for short, we call it AmDocs, which is March 21st to 25th. There's this really terrific documentary that's coming to us this year from the Medill Group. It's called Kick, and Jack is one of the directors of it. And Jack, can you tell us about Kick? It sounds really terrific, and I'm excited for this.
Yeah, hey, I'm Jack Izzo. I am one of the co-directors of Kick, which, like Leighton said, is a documentary, a short doc produced at Medill School of Journalism. Before I actually describe the film, I just want to shout out the other two directors who deserve just as much credit as I do. That's Henry Roach and Aaron Wang. We all made the film together, and it was a really collaborative process. Um, so I'm just happy to be here to speak about it. So yeah, as for how Kick came about, the documentary was made as a part of a class project, or it was essentially the class, with under the direction of Brent Huffman, who's a wonderful professor at Medill. And like day one of our semester, of our quarter at of this class, he says, okay, so we're gonna get our groups together and we're gonna start working because 10 weeks, which is the length of our quarter at Northwestern, is not a lot of time to produce a documentary from start to finish, even a short one. So we all threw around a bunch of different ideas in our group of kind of what subjects we were interested in and whether we had any interesting ideas. And Henry, one of the co-directors, threw out this idea of, oh, hey, I know this guy named Grant, and he runs this organization called Queer Kickboxing Club Chicago. And he's really cool, and I've been following him for a while, and I think it'd be really interesting to kind of follow him and see what that looks like. And everybody really liked the idea because I think kickboxing and any kind of martial arts are really they're activities that lend themselves really well to a visual medium. Actually just kind of any multimedia project, right? You have like the really satisfying like the we didn't have to do any Foley because the sounds of like a fist hitting a punching bag are pretty good as they are. But he's just a really, really interesting person. And as soon as we met him for the first time, I think we kind of knew. We were like, oh yeah, this is going to be a really fun project, and we were super excited to get started. So yeah, that's how we met Grant.
I mean, it's such an interesting topic. I mean, when you hear the synopsis of this, your imagination goes wild about the possibilities. Actually, doing the film and get to know Grant, what kind of stuff did you learn by producing this film?
Well, I learned that I should never punch somebody if I don't have the proper training. As it turns out, like there's a large amount of technique that's involved with punching somebody, and it's you got to learn that before you do it right. Otherwise, you like end up breaking a knuckle or something. But yeah, I learned all about kind of the world of kickboxing and how I guess how hard it is to fit in for somebody like Grant, who is like just he's I mean he's trans, right?
Mhm.
So he's just not really he doesn't fit the stereotypical mold of what you might imagine a martial artist would look like, or um well, not look like, but you get what I'm saying.
Right,
In
right.
he's not like every martial artist you've ever met before. And so I think being able to spend time with Grant, who is just this really, really amazing person, not just in kickboxing, but in all of the other work he does to just kind of build community
Mhm.
around, like build a queer community in Chicago, was like incredible. And he's just very funny. He's I hate like calling Grant a character because it feels like slightly like I'm dehumanizing him, but he truly is a character in that he's just somebody you want to spend time around. And so it was just really great getting to kind of live in Grant's world for, you know, 7, 8 weeks.
Now, when he trains people, is this training for competition, training for self-defense, or a combination of all that?
Right. So QKC, which is his organization, is meant to be a safe space for queer and trans folks to, I guess, practice not just kickboxing, but any martial arts they want. But Grant specializes in kickboxing now. So we actually, you'll see, we talk a lot about self-defense in the film, just because I think it's the most common way that people kind of get into martial arts, and especially being a minority like that is, constantly demonized by a lot of people who, for whatever reason, just don't. I'm not going to get into that, but
Right, right. I mean,
for for a minority who gets demonized and is like more at risk of these kind of attacks and these very hateful people, like being able to defend themselves is, I think, arguably more important. And so there's a lot of discussion about like what what speaking up for yourself as a queer or trans individual means, and how defending yourself is in and of itself kind of a way to build community, and like learning to defend yourself and learning to stand up for your identity uh is, I think, a really important part of our film. He also does do um some training, although not as much for competitions, because a large problem is that as a non-binary individual, there's not really a place for him to compete. He hasn't, Grant himself hasn't competed in a while because that's just not how the governing bodies just aren't designed to support those those identities, which is, silly, but it is what it is. And he's working through QKC. He's working to try and change that.
I mean, would he ever consider starting his own organization?
Uh, Watch the film and find out, is what I have to say
Oh,
about that.
that's the best
Um,
teaser I've heard on these interviews.
yeah,
Nice
listen,
job.
listen. I can't say that he's going to start his own organization, and I can't say that he starts the organization in the film, but watch the film and find out is how I would respond to that.
Uh, well, I mean, one of the things that's interested many levels, just the idea of a trans person having a kickboxing class in self-defense, but also I used to cover both boxing and mixed martial arts. So to me, it's
Hmm.
just really, really fascinating. Um, now, did you work on some kickboxing? How good did you get if you did?
That was like the one thing that none of us were able to do. We were too busy holding cameras and microphones and all that, all the fancy equipment to actually get to kickbox with Grant. That's actually something that I've been like meaning to look into myself. It's just like seeing, I'm like, what would it take just to try it out for once? Because it genuinely, I think Grant really shows how good of his teacher he is, like almost innately. Like you kind of, you go around him and you understand really, really immediately, like, oh, this is somebody who really cares about what he's doing and how to do it, and he's just fantastic. And that was like definitely something I like kept coming up in, I think, in all of our minds during production, was like, okay, can we do this? Like, what would it take for us to get into this? So who knows, maybe in the future.
So let's pivot a little bit. Well, not too far, but this time, but like let's talk about working together as a group. There's three people. how what were the dynamics of that? Because obviously with three people, you got to kind of divvy up who does what and stuff. How did you guys handle that?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of active communication, right? Like not to, beat the dead horse of like, oh, if you don't communicate, nothing will work. But that's how we got through it is making sure to stay in contact with Grant and let him know what our plans for filming and all that were, but also stay in contact with each other. One thing that we found was really useful was kind of like letting everybody take their own direction with the film and see where it led them in terms of like using the material that we had shot and just like, okay, what did each of us notice about a given interview, or what did each of us notice about this footage that we found really compelling? When it came down to it, I think that having a trans director on the film was also critical. Henry is trans himself, and that perspective was um like it made the film. Like this film would not have existed in the way that it does without Henry's um unique perspective on like how to make a film about the trans experience without making it a quote unquote trans film, if that makes sense. Like the film is not about Grant discovering that he's queer. It is just that's the truth of the matter, and that's as much as we felt needed to be discussed about it. So yeah, like I said, in terms of how to how to balance a group dynamic, talk and talk a lot and talk as much as you physically can every day if you need to.
Now, this sounds like a topic that has some legs to it. So, do you guys have any plans to expand on this documentary for the future? Because right now it's a short,
Right,
but
yeah.
what are the plans for the future, if there are any?
Yeah, we've thought about it. There might be. Uh, I think some of it kind of ends up depending on what Grant's what Grant decides to do and whether he decides to really dig in and focus on QKC because like I said a bit earlier, he runs like Queer Kickboxing is one of three community-based organizations that he runs. Like we don't even get to talk about the other two because they were just like we had the footage, but it turned out that it didn't like fit in as nicely as we wanted it to. But like that man does so much work. And so if he like wants to dedicate himself to kickboxing, I think that there's a real possibility that there's more in the future, but TBD.
Okay. Now, how did this class change your career projections? Because obviously, I think a lot of people who get into Brent's class, they're thinking they're going to be something else in journalism, and then with the documentary, it kind of changed the trajectory of a few of his students. Where
Yeah.
do you like? What kind of journalist were you? Did you want to be coming into Medill, and then with this class, did it change it by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for what my co-directors are feeling, but I know for me, I came into Medill as a whole with no journalism experience. So it was kind of crazy that I like actually chose journalism kind of on a whim and then loved it enough to stick with it. Like here I am today. Uh, so I think that going into documentary, like I'd always really had an interest in doing a lot of video stuff, but I'd never really gotten the opportunity to do it before. And so just like being given the opportunity to do that was like kind of not groundbreaking, but like mind blowing that I was always like shocked that like I was able to do it. It was super blessed. But I think that yeah, I've definitely got some ideas in the future for projects I might like to work on past the scope of Kick.
And we were talking beforehand. You're a working journalist now. Can you talk about what you're doing right now?
Yeah, so it's an interesting time to find a job right now is what I will say, but I managed to land a position at Snopes, the fact-checking organization. And so I'm reporting on all sorts of weird internet crazy stuff on a daily basis. And that's been super rewarding. I really do enjoy it. Um, Keep trying to convince my editors that like we should really get into that multimedia. But no, it's been super fun and I really love it there and I feel very grateful to have the opportunity to continue working in journalism after college.
Now, in your career there, have you had to go fact check something? You're like, why are we doing this? This is kind of obvious.
Like
Because
at
you,
Snopes?
yeah, at Snopes,
Yeah.
have they put you on something? You're like, well, why are we doing this? We know this is not real or it is real, and then you have to do it anyways.
I think that that's kind of like I think that's kind of a classic trap for journalism, actually. Before kind of working on Kick, a decent amount of my journalism had been like science reporting and environmental reporting.
Mhm.
And with that, that's very like explainer heavy and like trying to take complicated stuff and just dumb it down. And so I have actually have a little post-it note that like perfectly represented this. It just says you do not know the answers. And so that's something I think I also learned from Kick is that the best way to learn about something from like if you're interviewing somebody, the best way to learn about that thing is to let them tell the story.
Mhm.
Um, that's I think a real hallmark of documentary as a medium. And so I've kind of given up, or well, I wouldn't say I've given up, but like I very much disagree with the notion that I know what something is like going into it. Or if I think I know what something is like, I better be doing the research to make sure that I'm actually correct about that and not assuming things and then getting bit in the ass for it later.
I'll give you something that I used to do. So when I was a sports writer, what I do sometimes is I write out notes about what I think the story is going to be because it's deadline intensive. With what.
Right. Yeah.
So what I did, but to me, what always made the story is whatever was not on my list is what was made my story because it's like you said, I have these preconceived notions, but they're not always right or accurate or clearly tell the story. But then I would look, and when I found things that surprised me or it educated me, and that's what
Yeah.
made my
Yeah.
story. So that sounds like kind of like what you were talking about too. So
Yeah, I would say that that's like a real I don't think listen, I'm sure that somebody can tell me that I'm wrong here and like cite 17 documentaries where this did work. But I feel like the best documentaries are never are part of making a doc is evolving to what comes at you. Like there's no script, obviously. Everything happens as it happens, and you only get one chance to film something. And so I think that's what making a good documentary is really, really focused on is okay, like okay. I was watching Harlan County, USA recently, which is like Barbara Koppel's from the 70s about like cinema verite about a giant miners strike. But if you do the research on that film, like Koppel is like on record as being like, oh yeah, like this was not supposed to be the documentary. Like we were filming something else, and then we found out that this was happening, and we were like, okay, well let's go film that too for this, and the change of scope and like going with the flow, I think is really important for documentary filmmaking.
I think in journalism, that's the best skill you have is learning to pivot.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, for
like
sure.
you said, we always go in, it's going to be one thing, and it turns out being a whole other thing, and
Right,
it's
yeah.
it was an exciting career when I used to do it. I loved it. You're gonna have to fact check something for me. I was looking
Uh-oh.
at the internet about you,
Mhm.
and it says you were on a game show twice.
I was on a game show twice. I appeared on Jeopardy in high school, as a teen tournament contestant, and then I appeared again. I got like one of literally, I mean, I'd say once in a lifetime, but I suppose twice in a lifetime opportunity to come back for the high school reunion tournament, which aired about just over a year ago today.
Wow.
Um, it was, you know, it's an incredible experience. I made a lot of friends from that, but I don't like it's something that happened to me. I think it's really interesting. Like people always bring it up, and I'm like, I don't know. I did it. Like it was a very cool experience. Like I definitely recommend it. I met
Right.
Alex Trebek. He was fantastic.
Hmm.
I think that one of my goals for the future is making sure, or you know, at least trying to make sure that that's not like the peak of my existence, if you will.
Well, I think this interview, we know that's up to the peak. I mean, you're just doing a lot of great, interesting work,
Thank
but
you.
we do have a lot of Jeopardy fans. And I also saw one more thing about you that I thought was really funny, that you go to this place for trivia night every week. Is
Oh,
it a burger place or something?
okay. So yeah, so like I am not the only one of this is like a really this is deep. Um
Okay.
so after I appeared on Jeopardy in high school, like
Hmm.
I when I got to Northwestern, I met somebody else, one of my really good friends now, Benny, who I convinced to try out, and he also ended up appearing on Jeopardy. And so we, over the course of like 4 years, we have, I would say, relatively regularly gone to trivia nights. First up in Evanston at Bob's Pizza, which was the you know the whatever the local trivia place is, and now we play in on the north side of Chicago at Carol's Pub, which is you know on I don't want to like dox myself, but it's on Leland and Clark. And it's a fantastic little like I would say dive-ish bar. But the trivia is very competitive. Like, but
Wow.
you know you might expect like okay, you have two Jeopardy kids, like you're just gonna like sweep everything. But as it turns out, both of us are really young, and
Mhm.
so when you ask questions about obscure 70s and 80s movies and TV, there's only so much we know, and that generally ends up being our downfall.
Wow. Well, just so you know, the Monday night of every Monday night they have a drag queen trivia and uh, bingo. So, you know, if you
Oh,
want to sneak
wonderful.
away from the closing ceremonies, you can sneak out over there and see if you can clean up on some prizes to take home
Right,
during the
right.
festival. Well, like I said, I'm really looking forward to this documentary. I'm so glad you guys did this story. I think it's going to be very educational, and you know, there's a lot of hot topics are involved with your documentary. So, I mean, not necessarily, but I think just seeing the profile of Grant will really be enlightening, and I'm really looking forward to it, and as well as meeting you in person.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, and again, I just want to give like a final shout out to Henry and Aaron, my two co-directors, because like I know I'm the one here talking and like kind of
Hmm.
representing the film, but genuinely this was a work of like we talked about earlier, this was really a work of collaboration, and I feel like I can only take one third of the credit. So yeah, big shout outs to those guys. And yeah, I'm really excited to see everybody in Palm Springs and show kick.
Let's not forget this. I just remembered. So you're from San Diego, so this is almost like a homecoming, a little bit of a homecoming for you.
I mean, yes. I haven't I actually weirdly I never like made it out to Palm Springs despite living in
Oh,
San Diego for like however many years, 18, whatever.
wow.
It just like I don't know. I didn't go to Coachella. There was no reason for me to go to Coachella.
Oh,
There was no reason for me to go to. I should have gone to Indian Wells, honestly, while I was there. But
oh, you're a big
um,
tennis fan?
well, yeah, I am a sports fan. You know, I
Oh,
think that also honestly helped with the documentary. It took like Henry had kind of like the trans perspective, and I had the like okay, what makes a good like sports film? You know, there's not much like it's not like we're not talking about like Rocky here, but perhaps it's perspective that was necessary anyway.
well, I like the idea of how you guys work together and both inform the story to bring it a richer texture. So
Yeah, yeah,
that's why I'm
yeah.
looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll talk a lot between now and during the
Absolutely.
festival.
Yeah.
Jack, thanks so much. As a reminder to everyone, March 21st to 25th is the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival. Our opening night guest will be Sean Penn. Get your tickets soon, they're going fast, and we look forward to seeing everyone at the film festival. Thanks again, Jack. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.